Welcome to Science Access. In today's class, we're going to talk about projectile. Just talk about projectile motion. All right. If you are new to this channel, please kindly subscribe. Now, what do you understand by the term projectile? Projectile is an object launched with an initial velocity such that it moves solely under the influence of gravity. In this case, you are neglecting air resistance. All right. Now, I'll just explain to you a very simple diagram. Let's assume this is a ball. Okay. This is a ball. But you kicked the ball with an initial velocity of what? Let's say 20. All right. And the ball moves like this and back to the original position. Okay. Now, this is a simple illustration of a projectile. You launch an object with an initial velocity, and the object moves solely under the influence of gravity. Now, note the fact that the ball is moving like this, like this, like this. Now, here it attains a maximum height in this place. Okay? Then continue, start moving downward. Eventually arriving at the horizontal level at which it was launched. Now, let's take a few look at some things in projectile. Projectile has two components. They move in two components, and which is the vertical component and the horizontal component. At this point, this is the horizontal component, this is the vertical component. At this point, horizontal, vertical, or vertical, horizontal. Here, the same thing. So, we have two components. The horizontal component and what? The vertical component. If you are asked, for example, to calculate a ball was launched with an initial velocity of what? 20 meters per second, making an angle of 45, for example, or 30 to what? This horizontal. And you're asked to calculate what the horizontal and the vertical component. It is simple. The horizontal component, which is the VH, for example, is what? V cos theta, or cos what? The angle. While the vertical component, okay, let me use Vx and Vy. Vx, Vy is equals to what? V sine theta. It's a very simple component. This is the first thing that you should note when we are talking about what? Projectile. Now, before we move further, note that the object that was launched is the projectile. The motion is what? The projectile what? Motion. The motion of that object is what? The projectile motion. Now, this is the trajectory. This part taken by what? The projectile is actually what? The trajectory. Why this shape is what? A parabola what? Shape. So the curved part exhibited by a projectile is called what? The parabola what? Shape. Please take note of that. Now, something else that you also should note when you're talking about projectile, these are actually very simple concepts. All right? Something you should note is get used to the equations of motion, because we'll be using that to what? Do calculation. Now, let's define some basic quantities on that projectile. You talk about the time of flight. This object moves from this place to this place. The total time that it takes for this object to move from here up to this place is called what? The time of flight. I'll give you the formula regarding that. Now we'll have the maximum what? Height. This object is moving through this place. Now, this place, if you realize this place is like the object attained a height here, and you realize that here is kind of horizontal. The object was no longer moving up and was no longer moving down. So this place is actually what? The maximum what? Height. So what is the maximum height? This is the maximum what? Vertical displacement of what? The projectile. Please take note of that. Why the horizontal range, or the range, is actually what? The horizontal what? Distance moved by what? The projectile. Please take note of that. Now, some of the things that you should take note of when you're talking about projectile is that at this maximum height, the velocity is actually what? 0. At this maximum height, with this item or this fact that I'm stating will be what useful in calculation, or when I'm doing calculation, we'll just talk about it. Now, let's take a look at some of the basic equations that you'll be using in projectile. What is the formula for calculating for what? The time of flight. Time of flight is represented by what? T. And you'll be using 2u sine what? Theta all over what? G. So the second thing we're going to talk about is the range. Formula for the range is simple. Range or horizontal range represented by arrow is equals to what? U square sine 2 theta all over G. Right? And the last one is actually height. The maximum of height is equals to what? U square sine square theta all over what? 2G. Now, this formula is very useful when we are talking about calculation in projectile. We'll also talk about some other formula that you need to know. Now, let's take a look at this question. A projectile is launched with an initial velocity of this at an angle of 60 degrees with the horizontal. Calculate the time of flight, the range, and the maximum height. All right. If I am to draw the projectile, I can just take I just draw a line like this and take it like this. All right. Like this. Here is 60. Then velocity is actually what? 200 meters per what second. So you can just do your calculation. Remember, you can always calculate for the vertical component of the velocity and what the horizontal. If you have to do the vertical component and the horizontal, for example, the vertical component is what? V sine 60. That's 200 sine 60. The horizontal component is what? 200 cos 60. Vertical, that's Vy is equal to what? 200 sine 60. You can get your answer. Horizontal component Vx is equal to what? 200 cos 60. All right. Well, we are not asked for that. Let's just calculate for the time of flight. Time of flight, you know that time of flight is equal to what? 2u sine theta all over what? G. So in this case, 2 times what is u? Initial velocity is what? 200. Then sine 60 all over what? G is gravity, right? And approximately what? 10. So if you do that, you get your answer. And you have your answer is what? 34.6. Now, if I ask you to calculate for the time that it takes to get to what? The maximum height, it's actually the time of flight divided by 2. All right, but we'll not talk about that. In my question and answer series on projectile, we'll solve more challenging questions. So the second one is the range. Range is equals to what? U square sine 2 theta all over what? G. So, which is 200 square times sine bracket 2 times what? 60 all over 10. So you use your calculator. So you have your range. Your range as 3464. All right. Remember, this is seconds actually. This is what? Meter. Okay. The horizontal range. Why the last one is what? The maximum height, which is u square sine square theta all over 2g. So here we have 200 square times. Now in this case, you are going to look for sine 60 first. Bracket sine 60 what? Square all over what? 2 times what? 10. So you just do it, you get your answer. So you have your maximum height as what? 1,500 meters. So it's a very simple stuff. You can always use your calculator to quickly verify that. So aside some work is being displayed on the board, solve the questions and send it to the email display. Take the picture of your working and send it to the email display. Or you can simply drop your answer in the comment section. In the part 2 of this series, I will solve more challenging questions and answer. Thank you for watching.